Hey guys, hope everybody's doing well. Uh, excuse me, I had quite a few people ask me after I made a post on Instagram and Facebook last week about some goals that I've been working on for the last couple weeks and finally got them all accomplished. And I had quite a few people ask me, hey, what's your goal setting process look like? Or how do you set goals? Or, what are you doing there? And so I thought, it might be something that could help other people. And so I'm gonna try to walk you guys through my process, and this is exactly that. It's my process. Everybody's a little bit different, and there are guys that have been much more successful than I have been, that probably do things very differently. And so I don't necessarily think there's a right or a wrong way. I just think that it is important to set goals, to write them down, and this is kind of my process and how I break those things down. And so if you guys have seen any of the Tip Tuesday videos that we've been doing, last week we talked about specifically 3 areas, and I need to kind of refresh for those of you that haven't seen it, tell you about these 3 areas, because I think these are 3 areas that affect everything that we do. So when we're talking about bettering ourselves and competing and getting better, number 1 is the physical aspect. So whatever that might mean for you. So for a lot of us, hey, that means there's only one L in physical. That means, hey, gym, like getting in shape, doing running, whatever it might be, being at a peak physical level, no matter what event we're competing in. Our physical preparedness is extremely important. And so that ties into number 2, which is the mental game. So, which I think, as I've said before, is one of the most ignored aspects of rodeo, or of competing in general. And so I think that spending time visualizing this, I consider mental goal setting, proper goal setting, working on the mental aspect of rodeo is extremely important. That leads us to our third thing, which is the technique. And so when we talk about technique, that's your event specific skill development. So spurboard, bucket machine, rope and dummy, rope and calves, rope and steers, whatever it might be, something that is event specific for you to get better at your event. And so what happens is a lot of times we spend a lot of time on the technique, and we might not spend as much time on the physical or on the mental, or we spend a lot of time physically and technically, but we don't spend a whole lot of time on the mental. And what you'll find is that in order for for us to really be successful, we've got to focus on all 3. We've got to spend an adequate time on all 3, and it really is a circle that has to be unbroken. So if we're just focusing on 2, we're not going to be as successful as if we're focusing on all 3. So that's kind of a recap. I kind of say all of that because that's going to affect my goal setting process and how I set goals. So first thing is we need a main goal. Hey, what's our main goal? What are we working on this season? A season long goal. For some of you, it might be goat tying state champion, or for others, it can be a number goal also. So, a number goal or a task goal. I say like, hey, I want to win this much money this year. I want to bring in this much money, or whatever it might be, or specifically I want to, world champion or whatever. When we're setting these goals, all of them, what's important to keep in mind is that they should be lofty. They should be what we might think as out of our reach. However, they should also be somewhat attainable. Does that make sense? So I think the 2 biggest things that ruin goal setting for people is, number 1, they set a goal that is just way out there. Like it's their first year on their card and their goal is to win the world. Not to say that you can't do that. However, what's going to happen is when you set a goal that is way out there and you're not reaching it, and steadily week after week you don't feel like you're making a whole lot of progress on that goal, goal setting is going to become something that you're pretty sour about, because, well, I set goals, I write it down, and it didn't happen. Well, we went a little too far. The flip side of that coin is setting a goal that is too small. Something that is easily attainable is not going to keep us motivated, because we know, like, hey, we don't really have to probably work that hard in order to accomplish that. And that's the tendency that a lot of us have, is to set really attainable goals. And so I would look at your past experiences. Where did you finish in junior high school rodeo last year? Were you reserve champion last year in the steer riding? Okay, then maybe this year the goal is to be the state champion. Move your goal up some from last year. It shouldn't be the same as last year. But at the same time, if you were only able to ride one steer all year long and, you were 10th in the state, hey, my goal this year is to be top 3. I'm going to ride 70% of my steers or whatever it might be. So make it relative to the past experiences that you've had. Use those past experiences to better yourself and to set a goal that is lofty but attainable for this year. Okay, so that's what we need to know. So whatever your main goal is here, I think it's effective. I know it's effective to break it down a couple different ways. Okay, so what I do is I'll set a main goal up here for my season, and then the next thing I do is, okay, how am I going to do that? And you're not limited to 4 points here. I have 4 points on mine, but there's things that you can do. Number one for me is to stay active during the season. One thing that I learned this past year is that when I was competing, when I was rodeoing and getting on 5 or 6 horses a week, I wasn't doing a whole lot of physical activity during the week because I was, we're driving, we're traveling. And one thing I found that is important for me is that I've got to do a little bit of something every day, whether it's just a little bit of a jog or whatever it might be. I need to get the blood flowing in some way, shape, or form. And so I'm changing that this year. I want to stay active even during the season. Okay. Number 2 for me is to let go of mistakes. So this right here, you'll see number 1, stay active during the season. What does that address? It addresses the physical. Okay. Number 2, let go of mistakes. One thing that I was bad about last year is I was making some mistakes and I kept focusing on fixing those mistakes. And by focusing on those mistakes, I repeated those mistakes. And I spent half the season repeating the same mistakes and not getting any better. So it is important for me to let go of some of the mistakes that I make. I'm not going to be perfect all season long. I'm going to do the best that I possibly can to compete at the best of my ability. But when I do make a mistake, hopefully it's not all that often, I'm going to address it, figure out what I did wrong, why I'm doing it, how I can fix it, and then we're going to let it go and let go of my mistakes, move forward. And what does that address? It addresses the mental side of rodeo. And then number 3 for me is to, one of the technical things that is important for me that I think in the event of bareback riding controls so many other things is to drive my chin with my core. So here I've got something that is technical that I'm working on. So my breaking this main goal down here, I've broke it down into the physical, the mental, and the technique. Okay. The last thing for me that is extremely important for me to be successful all season long is to stay positive. It is not all about me, and to encourage other people, to be supportive of other people, to help other people along the way. Because at the end of the day, if I accomplish my main goal, but I do it by myself and I don't make anybody better in the process, then that's really a fail. So I want to stay positive and encourage others. That's number 4. Okay. So we've got a goal here. That's awesome. It looks good, but this is essentially, 10 to 12 months long. This goal is before we get any reward for our work. And that's a long time to stay motivated. So one thing I think that is important is breaking that main goal down. So how do I break that main goal down? We all have kind of periods here. We can kind of break our year into seasons. And so, for example, for me, I don't have a competition again until the beginning of January. So this period for me that I'm going to set some minor goals for is November 20th, which is today, to January 1st. And these are the things that I want to accomplish in that time frame. I don't have any rodeos between then. And so after January 1st, we'll see where we're at. We'll reassess and we'll set some new goals for the month of January. All of these goals down here are working towards my top one. Okay. All of these goals are going to help me work towards my top one. So this is all just examples, guys. Like you have to figure out what is the season for you. When is your next competition? Maybe it's just the month of December. What am I going to do the month of December that's going to work me towards my main goal here? Okay. So and then we repeat the process. Essentially, it's just on a smaller scale for these goals. So my main goal for this next month and 10 days is to be in peak physical shape. And so that's a very broad goal. And for you guys, I think that it would be helpful to break that down specifically. What does that mean? And it can be a weight that you want to be at. It can be an exercise that you haven't been able to do that you want to be able to do. It can be a weight at the bench press or the squats that you want to be able to get. Whatever it might be, write that in here. Put that in here. Whatever it is that you're wanting to accomplish physically or whatever it might be, you can put that in there for under your main goal. So then, same thing. We come back here and we ask ourselves, okay, that's the goal, great, but how am I going to get there? And so that's what I've done down here. I've got 3 ways that I'm going to be in peak physical shape by the time January 1st comes around. Number 1 for me, is the gym. 6 times a week, okay? And I've broken that goal down. I'm not just going to go into the gym and just go run a mile 6 times a week. I'm going to, my plan is to lift 3 times a week and to do core and a CrossFit style workout of some kind 3 times a week. And that is what works for me. Everybody has different body types. Everybody has different goals for their physical fitness that might not necessarily work for you, and that's completely okay. You guys need to come up with a physical fitness plan that works for your body type and what you're trying to accomplish. So number 2 is, and what does this address? What does number 1 address? Physical. We're going back to that physical part. Number 2, machine. 1 time a week, and the spur board 3 times a week. I'm working on that technique. What am I doing here? So I break that down, and I'm not just getting on the machine. I'm not just getting on the spur board and going through the motions. There are specific things that I'm working on when I do that, okay? So for me, I want to have perfect form, and the things that I am working on specifically, my chin down, my shoulders square, I'm pitching my feet, I'm burying my shanks, getting a hole with my feet, getting lots of drag, and I'm driving my hips. Those are the things that specifically I'm working on. So this is going to look very different for a lot of you, and that's okay. Figure out what are the form, what is important technique in your event, and what are some of the things that maybe you've struggled with in the past. Hey, let's focus on those in this maybe month-long season here, and let's get those fixed. Let's stay on top of those, okay? And then the third thing for me that addresses the mental part is visualizing. And I want to visualize 2 times a week, and I'm going to write that in my notebook. And so when I visualize, I had a lot of questions about visualization. When I visualize, when I write down in my notebook, I start very early. Like I start back to all the way to putting my rigging on my horse. So for those of you that are roping, hey, maybe it's, they're 3 away. What are you doing while you're sitting there watching the start on your horse? Once your horse is warmed up, what are you doing? Like, are you getting some powder on your rope? Are you talking to people? Are you getting the zone? What are you doing there? How is your horse acting? What is the announcer saying? What are you seeing going on? Okay. And then, it's time for you to ride in the box and ride out how your horse feels underneath of you. You can feel your feet in the stirrups, your rope in your hands, your reins in your hand, like you're riding your horse in and backing him in the box, turning him. Which way do you turn him? How does that process look for you? And what do you do to keep him freed up? And so then you write that through. And for me, that pre-ride or pre-run stage is what is actually the longest. That's what takes the longest amount of time in my visualization, because that's when typically I'm the most nervous, is in the moments leading up to my competition. Once we get in the box or I get in the chute, most of my nerves go away and my subconscious takes over. And so for me, it really helps my nerves to write out, what am I going to do? How am I going to handle this situation? How am I going to put my rigging on? How am I going to tie it off? What are we going to do in this whatever situation? So, and then I'll write through my ride and what are the things I'm doing. And one thing that I like to do is, as I'm writing out my ride, these things that I'm working on technique-wise, I'll write those things in. Like, as the horse leaves, I engage my core and really drive my chin down, and I can see my feet, and I'm looking right over the top of my rigging handle or whatever. And as he comes, I can feel that my shoulders are square. I'm getting lots of drag. As my feet come the first jump, I pitch my feet back down, and I again engage my core, tuck my chin, drive my hips, and set my feet and bury them all the way to the band. So my visualization really entails these form things that I'm working on in this shorter time window. Okay, so I go through all of these things, and then in a month from now, by January 1, I'm going to reassess. This up here is going to stay the same. But down here, I'm going to say, okay, the month of January, these are the rodeos I'm competing at. This is how much money I want to win, or this is what I want to do at these rodeos. This is how I'm going to do it. So I think that is extremely important. Not what are you going to do, but how are you going to get there. And then these goals, one of the things that I'll say is these goals, they can be relatively flexible, guys. Like set a good lofty one, but as you get close to reaching it, you need to go ahead and maybe make it a little bit bigger. If it's halfway through the season and you're 3/4 of the way to your goal, or you're there, hey, like, okay, I'm winning state. My goal was to win state. 3/4 of the way through the season, I'm winning state. I've got a comfortable lead, and I'm a national contender. Then I'm going to remove this win state, and I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to be top 2 in the nation in my event. Well, if I'm top 2 in the nation in my event, I probably stepped over that goal that I already had, that was to win state. I did that, and now I'm working on preparing myself for nationals. Okay, so set those goals specifically. Don't just say, hey, this is what I'm going to do. Say how. And when you're setting these goals, whether it's the main goals or whether you're breaking it into a time period, keep in mind these things: physical, mental, technique. If we'll use all of those things together, you'll be able to set a good plan for how you're going to go attack those goals. The last thing I'll say is that if some of you have been in a slump, or you feel like you're hitting a wall, you're at this barrier and you can't get through it, and your riding's not getting any better, your roping's not getting any better, I would say this is where I would go. I would go right here and look at these 3 things. If you will assess these 3 things, you can probably find out where you've gone wrong. Physical. Are you in good shape? Are you working out? Is your physical condition holding you back from accomplishing your goals? If the answer is no, move to mental. Okay, mentally, am I doing all that I can do to prepare? Is there something mentally that I'm not doing that's not allowing me to be successful? Am I visualizing? Do I have clear set goals? Am I doing my best to prepare myself mentally to be a competitor? And if the answer is yes, okay, then technique-wise, and this is where a lot of us that are in a slump, this is where we're struggling. Technique-wise, it's important to watch your film, to get people to video so that you can watch your film. Are you making the same small mistake that is continually preventing you from breaking through that wall? If you're not watching your film, then you might not know. So it's important to watch film, study what you're doing wrong. Is there something we can correct on the spurboard of the bucking machine? So if you're in a slump and you're struggling with something, or you have been, assess these 3 things. Figure out these 3 things, go through each one, check them off the list, and I bet you'll find your weak spot somewhere. If you're honest with yourself, you'll find your weak spot somewhere in these 3. Okay? I hope that everybody is able to get some use from this. I hope that this is useful for you. Listen, I am more than happy to. I don't know everything about goal setting. I barely tip of the iceberg. I know what works for me. I've spent a lot of time adjusting my goals and setting them, and this is some stuff that's worked for me. You guys might not operate the same way I do, but if there are questions, if there's something that I can help you guys with in your goal setting process, whether or workouts or whatever it might be, man, feel free to holler at me. Send me a message. Get my Facebook info is here. Holler at me, and I'll do the best that I can to help you. If I don't know how to help you, I will find somebody that does. Thanks for taking the time to watch. I hope that this has been helpful for you guys. Good luck this winter. Y'all spend a lot of time investing in yourself, so that when January, February, March comes around, spring season rolls around, you guys are ready to go out there and kick butt. We'll see you guys later.